All right, you didn't start your practice to become a full-time billing detective, right? So what if you could let Athelis RCM take that off your plate? It's AI-powered revenue cycle management that actually gets you paid faster with fewer denials and way less stress. Athelis plugs into your EMR, no messy tech drama, and it starts working immediately. Denials managed, payments tracked, insights clear as day. You get a real-time dashboard that shows you where your money is, what's working, and where you can improve. If you're ready to stop chasing dollars and start collecting them, it's time to check out Athelis RCM. Go to athelis.com and book that demo. That's ATHELAS.com. Your future self will thank you.
I would like to back you financially and help you get to your goal to where you can really make an impact in the orthopedic community, and we can have a clear exit plan in 5 or 6 years to where you can buy me out and we can go on, you know. And my wife came home and said, let's do it, because that was her biggest fear too, was putting this thing financially up front. Sure. When we're only 30 years old or whatever. So now you fast forward 7 years, opened 7 clinics in surrounding areas, also mobile therapy. So, you know, we've built a tremendous business. We're averaging about $1 million worth of revenue in every clinic.
Come on, come back on. There we go. This episode is brought to you by Pintcast Media. If you've ever thought about launching a podcast to grow your brand, your clinic, your business, we can help. Now, on to today's guest. From swinging for the fences in college and pro baseball to now leading a fast-growing network of PT clinics in sunny Florida, today's guest knows how to spot opportunity and move fast when it counts. Whether he's building a brand that's bigger than himself or removing barriers to help other people thrive, today's guest solves problems and makes sure others get to shine. Please welcome Justin Stiver on PT Pintcast. It's like a presentation. If it does it, it means I'm doing it wrong. Okay. First thing I want to ask is, you made the jump from college and professional baseball to healthcare. Is that right? First of all,
yeah,
am I right?
Yeah. And honestly, I wish I had a story that said that I put all this thought into it and all that stuff. But honestly, I studied business in college, and I was definitely a baseball player before I was a student. So I found myself kind of all over the place, kind of taking the classes that my academic advisor told me were the easiest through undergrad. Yeah. So I ended up getting drafted in 2006 by the Astros. I was about 2 semesters away from graduating with a degree in interdisciplinary social studies, which was definitely not on the track of going to physical therapy school. So
no.
Fast forward a couple of years, I ended up getting hurt, tore my bicep tendon, lost my baseball career, and kind of in that transitional period where I'm like, oh shit, like what do I do now with my life? I was in Orlando doing at spring training, kind of knowing that I probably wasn't going to have a fruitful baseball career at this point. But I was doing my rehab, and kind of just started having that conversation, like, what do I do next? And then I was hanging out with the physical therapy team there with the Astros, and they seemed like they were having fun, and, you know, it was great. And I was like, man, this sounds pretty cool. You know, what the heck do I have to do to become a physical therapist? So, and also long term, I really wanted to own my own practice. Wanted to have my own business, I should say, whether or not it was a physical therapy practice or some other kind of business. So those two things aligned. I said, okay, so I can start my own practice in physical therapy. I can go to school. And so I ended up going back, and I took all of my prereqs. I took all the sciences in 1 year. I took all my core sciences in the fall, the second one in the spring. I wasn't allowed to take them all at the same college because they told me that would be a recipe for disaster. So I had to piece it together. I had to take online physics at like FIU. I had to, do all kinds of shit to get done. And it's funny how at that point I spent the last like 4 or 5 years telling my parents how hard college was in order to get like C's and B's. And then when it comes time to like where it's all on my own dime and it's all on my own schedule, it's like, wow, I can get straight. I had to get straight A's,
Hey,
by the way, in all those sciences in
yeah.
order to actually get my GPA up to get accepted into physical therapy schools, and I did it.
Wow.
And now I will forever I will forever tell my kids they are full of shit if they tell me that they can't get good grades in college because it's not that hard. You just have to actually study and not go out
Who
every
thought?
day.
Good for you, man. Because that's not an easy hill to climb. I similar background where like journalism and communications degree, and then second career decided to go into PT. And they were like, okay, well, you need 9 prereqs. I'm like, well, how many out of those 9? And they're like, 8. You need to get 8. I'm like, great, awesome. Like, let's do that. Like, let's figure that out. And I was running a radio station at the exact same time. Like, I was running 2 radio
Okay.
stations. Sorry, technically. So I was on the air with like a physics book, like you, like on the air with a physics book and interviewing like Shinedown or something. This is back in like the 2000s. And they're like, what's the deal with the physics book? I'm like, oh, it's just really heavy. It's a doorstop. Don't worry about it. But meanwhile, you being like, yeah, like I had like a C average or a C plus average. But when you want it and it's something you want, like baseball or
Yeah.
PT, suddenly you find you clear out everything that is not helping you achieve that. And stuff doesn't get easier. I think it gets simpler. And those words are different to
Right.
me. Simple, not easy, right?
Yep.
Just get A's in these classes. Well, that's simple to say, not easy to do. But when you're like, okay, well, what do I need to remove out of my life to make sure that happens? Is not a
Exactly.
skill everybody possesses. Not everybody possesses that.
And it's really
So
hard to do until you have to do it. I'm not a
yeah,
it's almost like in my life I've succeeded when I had to do something that I wanted to do, but this is the only path forward. It's really is amazing how kind of many excuses you can make for yourself and say like, wow, this is too hard. But it's
yep,
just like when you focus yourself and you don't have all these outside distractions, it becomes very clear what you have to do, and you kind of reverse engineer it. Like, what do I have to do to get an A? Well, I gotta actually show up to every class, and I got to take notes, and I got to rewrite my notes, and I got to tape record the lectures and listen to them on my way home, and then all of a sudden it becomes pretty easy.
yeah. Well, what lessons from sports? Because we skipped over the fact that you were like, what position were you, by the way? You were,
I was a
in the outfield.
pitcher. I was a pitcher.
Good
Yeah,
for you, man. So, what
I
lessons from
played.
sports still
Yeah,
guide
so
you? Like, I want to know that.
honestly, I the biggest takeaway I found from sports was that the team approach to things is super important. It sounds kind of cliche, but like your team, uh, you know, like I've been on teams that we had so much talent, but we weren't kind of firing together as a team. The coaching staff didn't really breed that culture of team mentality well, and we were good, but we were mediocre. But then I was on teams where we were decent talent, but we were an unbelievable team just because of that the work that we put into making sure that we all were fighting for the same goal, and and I kind of took that and I really wanted to replicate the team approach. One, I thought that it was the best way to do things in business and
Mm-hmm.
physical therapy, but two, I also thought it was a much more enjoyable culture to have. So um, I did my first or second clinical rotation in an outpatient setting. I forget which one it was, but it was one of those. There was no team mentality there. There was, your patient, whichever one you got lucky enough to treat on the first day, was the one that stayed with you the whole time, and you couldn't really collaborate with your peers the way you should be able to, because if anyone ever recommended something to you about your patient, then it was taken as an insult that you didn't know what you were doing and stay away from my patient. And without saying it, that's kind of the vibe I was getting. Everyone kind of went off into their separate corners of the treatment room and treated their patients outside of earshot, and it was just miserable. And I thought, you know what, I want to open up my own practice. I'm going to do this pretty quickly after graduation, and I don't want this to be the case. And I actually had a good comparison to what I wanted. The clinic that I actually ended up buying was the one I was working at before all this as a tech. So, and there was a team there with 4 or 5 people that worked together unbelievably. And we kind of shared patients and we talked, and it was a mentorship mentality. And it wasn't done by design, I don't think, but it just happened to be that way. So
Yeah.
I remember taking that mentality that we had in the clinic at my job, and I kind of tried to reverse engineer that into an SOP that we could use for scalability in the business that I started.
So you had an example of what you did want and what you didn't want. I don't think you need both, but I think you
Right.
need one of them. Like you lucked out. You're like, okay, don't want that. Do want this. Great. Got it. I think if someone's listening, I don't think you need both. It sure as hell helps, right? But I think you need one of them. Like, even, it doesn't matter if it's the one I don't want. Well, I feel like you might need more than that. Like you need like I had a couple of different clinical experiences. So I was like, whatever that is, that ain't it. So I think I needed more than that. Well, all right, well, what do you want? Right now you need to play the opposite game. Chip away everything you don't want. So that's pretty powerful. And you're able to do it. Again, that's simple, but not easy to create something that you're like, yeah, this smells and tastes and feels like I want it to, is simple. And that's a different job than being a clinician. That's a totally different job. A business owner is a totally different job of being a clinician. So you're building, and you can give us the stats. You're building you're helping grow a fast moving network of clinics now in Florida. Give us the back of the baseball card. Stats.
Yeah. So
what does that look like?
We started in 2018. I actually bought a practice, and Tony Maritato. I bought Tony's practice down here in Florida. So connecting those dots for you all together. He and by the way, I've only met Tony in person a couple times, because by the time I started as a tech, he was already moved to Ohio, and he was already opened up his other practices up there. And this was his remaining practice down in Florida. So his team was kind of very self-sufficient, and he was looking for a tech position. And I don't know if I reached out to him cold or he reached out to me. I don't remember, but I got that job, and then timing worked out to where the PT that was there was moving out of state about the time I was graduating. So I literally started on a temporary license in her last month before she moved, and then passed my boards. I was the only PT there from out of the gate. We had like a part-time PT too helping, but it worked out great. I did talk with Tony a lot. Tony's a spreadsheet guy. He had a bunch of, that kind of thing. So I met with him regularly about every quarter about, what the business was doing. And so I kind of got my feet wet with that. And then I just started, it just opened up Pandora's box on me just self-educating as much as I possibly could, which was great. But, what I did was about 3 months. So one key part of this story is I was going to take on the purchase of Tony's business. And that was a handshake him and I had when I started with him. I was like, look, I want to own my own practice. He said, perfect, work for me. I'll sell you my practice when you're ready. And I said, okay, great. So a couple years into it, I called him. I was like, hey, I'm ready. And he's like, okay, let's start talking about it. Meanwhile, the biggest thing in my head was like, I want to have an orthopedic focused, outpatient clinic that, and it's very tough in our area. I don't know if it's this way all over, but it's very tough to have a single location where you're trying to cater towards orthopedic surgeons that might have a radius of patients coming from maybe 20 or 30 miles away. So
why is that? Is the radius the issue, or is it the size?
The issue is they don't want to do the thinking of like, okay, I know Justin down in Osprey, Florida has a really good little micro clinic, but I have patients coming from 7 or 8 different towns around them. So now I have to do the thinking. Do you live in Osprey? Because if you live in Osprey, what they're going to do is they're going to send to their best provider that has their zone covered. Yeah. So they're sending to our competitors because they have 8 or 9 locations in the area, and it makes them not think. So you can pick off a couple of ones that really, it's most of the time not the high volume, ones. It's the ones that are more micro niche clinics, or, that really care about their patients. I should say that,
Sure.
And maybe they'll send you on purpose. But if you really want to compete, then you need to have multiple clinics. So right away, I was like, how am I going to afford to fund multiple clinics right away?
Right.
Self fund. So it kind of fell into my lap, but a patient of mine, ex business guy, he shows up in the clinic, pissed off at the guy down the street because uh, he wasn't good at what he was doing and he said the wrong things. And he comes into us kind of all flared up and thinks physical therapy is a joke and starts telling me what to do. And I kind of listened to him and I said, all right, Brian, well, I appreciate your passion here, but here's what we're going to do. Here's your path to, get better and get you back on the golf course, get you back active. And he's like, holy shit, this is great. So fast forward about 12 weeks, he fell off his steps and broke his femur after having one too many drinks and trying to take a leak in the flower bed in the middle of the night. But speaking of that, cheers, by the way. I got my beer here.
Cheers. I got a Miller Lite in this.
And so he said, so, this guy was a seasoned business professional, retired to Casey Key, was very successful in his life. And I love picking the brains of my patients. So once I found out that he was this kind of guy, I was telling him what I was going to do. I was picking his brain about how he did his thing. And all of a sudden, on his last day, he was discharging. He says, Justin, will you come to my house after you get off work? I want to talk to you about something. I was like, okay. Go to his house. He says, look, I've been paying close attention for like the last 8 weeks or so about your leadership style, your team you have there. I've been doing my research on the profession, and I don't need to do this, but I would like to, if you would like to, I would like to back you financially and help you get to your goal to where you can really make an impact in the orthopedic community. And we can have a clear exit plan in 5 or 6 years to where you can buy me out and we can go on, So my wife and his wife and us had a couple dinners together talking about the deal, how this would work. And my wife came home and said, let's do it, because that was her biggest fear too, was footing this thing financially up front when we're only 30 years old or whatever. So now you fast forward 7 years, you open 7 clinics in surrounding areas, also mobile therapy in all 7 areas. We have about a 10-person mobile team doing home physical therapy. And we own all of our buildings. So, we've built a tremendous business. We're averaging about $1 million worth of revenue in every clinic. We're just kicking ass, man.
You ever use a system that just gets you? Like where everything actually makes sense and works like it's supposed to? That's the vibe with Empower EMR from MW Therapy. It's built specifically for physical therapists, so you're not stuck Frankensteining a bunch of software that was designed for other industries together. Empower is your one-stop shop from scheduling and billing to reporting and even built-in marketing. The real magic? The automation. This thing works with you, filling your schedule, reminding patients, and keeping everything moving behind the scenes. Clinics are raving about how fast the switch was and how much time they're saving. If you're tired of fighting your EMR and ready to work with a system that lifts you up instead of dragging you down, head to mwtherapy.com and schedule a demo. Empower, the upgrade you didn't know you needed.
Wow. So let me ask you a very Tony Maritato question. Are you a real estate company that does physical therapy, or are you a physical therapy company that does real estate? Because it feels like the two are so closely tied, especially with your model.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of both. I mean, I do think we have a very good, successful, actually physical therapy business here. But one of the reasons why we purchased the real estate was because it just financially made better sense for us than it was renting in our area. I mean, we were paying close to double what we could own the actual property for in Osprey, where we started. We were paying $90,000 per year in rent, and we could own that property for half that. So it's a weird thing. But and with Brian helping us and the banking relationships he actually brought to the table, we could afford to get these loans. and then I think we just kind of lucked out with a low interest rate environment as we purchased most of these properties. So we ended up, but also, to your point, I look at it as if the business can pay off the real estate for you, then it's a good retirement. I think a lot of PT practice owners are stuck with like, okay, I ran this practice for 20 years. Now I should be able to sell it and retire. And then from my experience trying to buy these practice owners, they think they have something that's more valuable than it is most of the time. And if you didn't have that extra real estate over 20 years making money for you and also appreciating in value and your company paying it off for you, then all of a sudden now you have an asset that you can actually retire with. So that is my long-term goal too, is to have an actual real estate portfolio that I can retire from also.
Yeah, it's the way to go. So how about I love asking these types of questions, which is biggest challenge, biggest surprise in doing this process, besides Brian falling off into his flower bed, which was a good serendipity, right?
Yeah. And what's actually cool about that, to kind of wrap that side of the story up, is I'm actively buying him out as we talk right now. We're supposed to close next month, and I'm going to own 100% of the company. And our plan worked out well, so it's great. But as far as challenges go, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have had these challenges. I mean, I'll talk for 10 seconds about like the reimbursement declines and the hiring struggles that everyone has. Those are kind of like the table fare of having a physical therapy practice everyone deals with. So those are real struggles that we've had to work through. But for me, the biggest challenges are building a team of over 50 employees at this point. Because I care so much about everyone being happy and everyone wanting to work for this company and us being successful, that, there's big swings in this business when it comes to managing employees. One day everything's going good, the next day it's not, and you really wear it on your sleeve. I mean, my beard had no gray in it a few years ago, so a lot of the stress that I bring home is employee related. And I don't want to say that employees are bad. That's not what I'm trying to say here. It's just that you end up, with that many employees, everyone's dealing with their own personal stuff. Everyone's dealing with their own health issue, their own financial issue. And you kind of have to like wear that with them if people you care about your team. Right.
That's what we started this saying, by saying being a clinician and being an owner, a boss, a leader, they're two different jobs. Playing first base is different than catching, right? I played both positions, and like catching was a super thinking position. I didn't think about that. I just thought I was the idiot with the, shin guards on. But you have to sort of like, no, I'm seeing the field from behind the plate differently than the first baseman. I can see the infield. I can see the out. It was unique. You're the only player facing that way. Like you quite literally are the only player facing that way, right? Everybody's facing home plate. You're looking their way. So being a leader is quite different. When I was in college, my uncle owned bars in New York. And when I was in college, what are you going to do next? And what are you going to do when you grow up? And I was like, I want to own a bar like Uncle Frank. And then I worked for my uncle. He was smart enough to be like, come work for me. And at the end of the summer, I was like, what do you want to do now? I'm like, I want to go to bars. I don't want to be in a bar. I saw it, but it was good, right? Like go jump in different. Because what I saw was, cocktail, like let's hang out and it's party time. And there was some of that, but the actual business of a bar restaurant was like this other stuff that I was like, yeah, not for me. Like cool, great for Uncle Frank. And I think Uncle Frank knew that, but if he tried to talk me out of it, I probably would have resisted. Yeah. But Uncle Frank was like, step right this way. Now, being a bartender 2-3 nights a week, great job. But owning the bar, different job. Playing the role or playing the coach.
And there's a real stress when you're dealing with when you feel responsible for other people's livelihood. It adds a real layer of stress that I think a lot of people can't understand that. And I'm not trying to say it as if like, oh, you shouldn't start your own practice, because I would do it 100 times over again. But it's the kind of stress that wakes you up at like 12:30 in the morning and doesn't let you go back to sleep, So
Sure. All right. So let's talk about leadership, since you brought it up a couple different ways. Focusing on leadership and letting others shine. I think some
Mhm.
people think being a leader is being the one who shines, right? But ironically, I think we both agree where it's more about making other people shine and listening to their
Right.
problems. How do you actually build leadership skills inside a clinic team, not just for yourself, but for others? Is there an approach you have? You said Brian was slowly watching your leadership style. What
Yeah.
what goes into that?
Well, I think you have to make a conscious effort not to, from the very beginning, not to build a brand around yourself.
Yeah.
Some people have successful business models where they do that, where they build their brand around themselves, but they're probably hard pressed to find good leaders willing to step up and help grow their practice. So what you have to do is really focus on having a brand, your business having its own brand, and then building your leadership up to support that, and doing things instead of micromanaging people and saying like, here's how I want you to do it. You say, hey, I expect you to come on board and have better ideas than I have. That's my expectations, and I want to be the person that pushes all the hurdles out of your way for you so that you can just like sprint past me and get first place, you know? So I feel like that is what I've gotten good at, is when someone has a problem, I'm like, let me take care of that for you. Okay. And then they're full throttle after that. They're not, and they ended up becoming something, becoming a therapist, becoming a manager, becoming, better than what I would have done. And if I was telling them what to do, for sure.
Yeah. Understood. Justin, you ready? You're a baseball player. You ready to play a game? We're going to play a quick game.
Okay, let's do it.
All right. We're going to play ball or walk away. Here's how it
All right.
works. I'm going to throw some business moves at you. You tell me if you're swinging or if you're taking the pitch. Swinging means you
Okay.
agree with it. You take it. Walking away, let it pass. All right.
All right, let's do it.
Someone opening a second location before their first one feels perfect. And I'm using that word in air quotes and specifically. Opening a second location before your first one is perfect.
I swang on that one already a few times, so let's go ahead and swing on that one for sure.
All right. And why? Is it the word perfect? Because is it ever perfect? Is that why you're going to?
That's one of my problems with it. It's never perfect, but also,
yeah.
If it's part of your strategic plan, which mine was, I wanted to open up 3 locations within like the first 18 months in order to better. And I even had a plan that included the names of orthopedic groups and physician groups in town that I wanted to be their go-to person for. And so I was actually reverse engineering that, and opening up locations was one of the key components there. So I had to open them up. I had to put the cart before the horse in order to get that thing moving,
Hiring someone for culture fit, even if they're slightly underqualified. You swinging away or are you taking that pitch?
Yeah, definitely swinging away there. I mean, cultural fit or personality fit, I think that's 80% of the importance to hiring somebody. Obviously they have to check a few boxes,
sure. Table stakes.
But for sure, I would definitely hire somebody, even if they weren't experienced enough.
2 more. Take an insurance contracts just to fill a schedule early on. Swing away or take that pitch?
Starting up de novo, maybe for but I would be ready and prepared to drop as soon as I went on any kind of a waiting list. The reasons why, which we have dropped a few of our bad contracts, we've dropped probably over 50% of them. And we were very happy that we did that. But the only reasons why I would keep a contract in the beginning is for brand building. Whether it's doing favors for a specific orthopedic group, and then once you get a relationship with that group, or once you get a relationship with that actual referral source, then you say, look, dude, we know each other. We're both business guys. I got to drop United Healthcare because they pay us $50 per visit. And at that point, you're like, oh, dude, I can't believe you were even taking them in the first place, And that's an easy conversation to have. But if I would have had that conversation from day one, de novo, before I even knew that provider, it might have been the difference between them using us in the first place. So I'm not saying that you have to follow my path, but as long as you think it through and have a strategic reason why you're doing something. What I highly disagree with is people just saying, I want to keep all my contracts because I feel like that's the right thing to do.
Right. Last one, offering cash-based services inside an insurance-based clinic. Swing away or taking a pitch?
Swing away. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I'm swinging on all these questions here.
Yeah. I like it.
Yeah.
Last thing we do on the show, Justin, is what we call the parting shot. Last chance for a mic drop moment, soapbox statement. What's Justin leaving with us at the end?
Well, let me think about this. What I would say is my number one thing that I think has led to our success is the ability to take anything that comes at you with an objective lens and never worry about what happened. Only worry about how you fix it and how to keep it from happening in the future. And that's every decision that we make. I don't dwell on things. I don't get stuck. And that includes, hiring and firing people. I've hired people when we didn't have a space for them, and I fired people when I couldn't afford to because because I didn't have. But you got to think objectively, and you got to move on it, and you got to be quick to make decisions, man. You got to be quick.
Love it, Justin. Appreciate the time. I don't want this to be the last conversation. I feel like you've got a lot to teach people, but I don't want to give them all too much at once. If someone wanted to reach out and get in touch, what's the best way?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'd say that's the best way. You look me up there. But I'm not. I definitely don't hide all my contact info. So you look me up. I'm not hard to reach.
Justin Stiver, appreciate the time, man. Thank you.
All right, Jimmy. Thanks, man. Good talking.
Let's be real, you didn't become a therapist to be average. You've got something in you that wants more mastery, more impact, more confidence in the clinic. That's exactly what Brooks Institute of Higher Learning delivers. Their residency and fellowship programs aren't just resume builders, they're transformation zones. You get one-on-one mentoring, deep dive classwork, labs, and real-time experience inside one of the most advanced rehab systems in the country. And the best part? You're not grinding this out on the side. You get a full salary and benefits while you train with the best. Whether it's ortho, neuro, peds, geriatrics, women's health, Brooks IHL helps you become the expert you know you're meant to be. Check out brooksihl.org to learn more and take that next step.